You hear about a great new educational idea, a new way of teaching, a new curriculum. It all sounds amazing on paper, but have you ever stopped to think about how that plan actually makes it into a real, live classroom? Well, that journey, it's probably one of the toughest challenges in all of education. So, let's get into it.
Okay, so I want you to just look at this number for a second. 90%. What in the world could that be referring to when it comes to education? Kind of ominous, right?
Yep, there it is. According to research from Wiles and Bondi, a whopping 90% of new curricula, they just don't stick. They're designed, they're written up, but they never actually get put into practice the way they were meant to. It's a huge problem.
So that's the big question we're going to tackle today. Why is there this massive chasm between the curriculum on paper and the one that actually happens in the classroom? We're going to dig into the models, the process, and the strategies to figure out what's going on.
So here's our game plan. We'll start with the challenge of change itself, and then look at the blueprints for how curriculums get designed. Then we'll walk through the 4 phases of making a change happen, and look at what actually works. After that, we'll talk about keeping an eye on the journey, and wrap up with why this whole thing is basically a never-ending process.
All right, let's start at the beginning, the blueprint. You gotta have a plan, right? Every curriculum is built on some kind of model that really shapes what learning is supposed to look like. But as you're about to see, not all blueprints are created equal.
At a high level, you've basically got these 3 big ideas that are always in a tug-of-war. First, you have the academic model. It's all about the content, the core knowledge. Then there's the utilitarian model, which is laser-focused on objectives, what should students be able to do when they're done. And finally, you have the progressive model, which is all about the process. How do students learn and discover things for themselves? So much of the debate really comes down to which one of these you prioritize.
And that tug-of-war leads to 2 very different approaches. On the one hand, you've got the rational model. It's super rigid, very step-by-step. You start with objectives, then content, then method, then you test it. Very top-down. But on the other side, you've got the dynamic model. This one is way more flexible and interactive. It assumes things are going to change and need to be adapted. And it's probably no surprise that teachers, the people actually in the classroom, tend to prefer this one.
Okay, so we've got the blueprint, but how do you actually take that plan and make it reality? Well, it turns out that making a change isn't a single event. It's a journey, and it has some pretty distinct phases. Researchers have kind of broken this whole process down into 4 stages. First, there's the need. Somebody somewhere realizes, hey, this isn't working. Then comes adoption, where a school or district says, okay, we're going to try this new thing to fix the problem. Next, the big one, implementation. This is where the rubber meets the road. And finally, if you're lucky, you get to institutionalization. That's when the new way of doing things just becomes the way things are done.
But, and this is so important, it never, ever works like a neat, tidy checklist. In the real world, these phases are messy. They overlap, they interact, they loop back on each other. You might be in the middle of implementation and realize you've uncovered a whole new need, which sends you right back to the beginning. It's much more of a cycle than a straight line.
So if the process is that complicated and messy, how do you beat those 90% odds? How do you actually make a new idea and innovation stick? Well, it turns out there are some key ingredients.
First, let's be really clear about what we mean by innovation. It's not just a cool new idea. It's the idea plus the whole process of getting people to actually adopt it. That second part is everything. You can have the best idea in the world, but if the adoption process fails, the idea fails.
Okay, this is basically the cheat sheet. Research shows that successful innovations tend to have these 5 things in common. Is it obviously better than what people are doing now? Does it fit with the school's culture and values? Is it simple to understand, or is it a nightmare of complexity? Can teachers try it out in one classroom before the whole school has to do it? And finally, is someone clearly explaining why this is a good idea? If you can't check these boxes, you're in for a rough ride.
So let's say you've got a great innovation, a solid plan, and you're rolling it out. You can't just launch it and hope for the best. Success requires constant attention, and that's where monitoring comes in. And listen, this isn't about micromanaging. It's about supporting people through the change.
So what is curriculum monitoring? Think of it as a constant feedback loop. It's all about collecting information to make sure the curriculum you intended to create is the one that's actually being implemented in the classroom, and ultimately that it's leading to the results you wanted students to attain. It's all about making sure those three things are lined up.
So why put in all that effort? Why is monitoring so critical?
Well, it's how you make things fair and effective. Monitoring helps you ensure that every single student's getting equal access. It's how you spot the roadblocks that are preventing students from succeeding. And it opens up conversations about what's working and what's not, whether it's the materials or the teaching methods. It's really just a tool for getting better.
Okay, that sounds great in theory, but what does it actually look like in practice?
It's really a mix of different tools. You've got classroom observations, just to see what's happening firsthand. You have interviews, actually talking to teachers, staff, and even parents to hear their side of the story. You can use questionnaires and surveys to get a wider range of data, and of course you have tests and assessments to see what students are actually learning. You need all of these to get the full picture.
And all of this brings us to our final and maybe the most important point of all. The work of curriculum, it's never really finished, because the world it's designed for is always changing.
I just love this quote. It talks about something called curriculum dynamikos. And the core idea is that the tension, that push and pull between different ideas we talked about earlier, that's not a bug, it's a feature. It's the engine that keeps the curriculum dynamic, flexible, and able to evolve. That conflict is actually what keeps it healthy.
So I want to leave you with this question to chew on. If a curriculum is defined by this constant change, this constant evolution, can we ever really say that one is finished? Or is it by its very nature just a permanent work in progress?
Now, all the concepts we've explored today are built on decades of incredible educational research. For anyone who wants to go deeper, the sources are right here for you. So the next time you hear about some shiny new educational plan, you'll know that the blueprint is just the start. The real magic and the real work is in the journey. Thanks for joining me.